Hello and welcome back to episode 8 of the Real Life Podcast. Today we're doing an episode that I've wanted to do from the very beginning of this. It sort of follows on from the Nolan episode. I'm here with my friend Will. How are you, Will?
I'm very well, thank you, Dom. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you?
Good stuff. Oh, I'm well, thank you. I'm very excited. I know that you are a big fan of the man we're going to talk about.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to be discussing the best films by David Fincher. What is it that his work hits home to you?
Well, something I'd say that is special about him as a director, and I was thinking about this, is probably versatility. I would say is my number one thing.
Yeah.
If you look at his entire body of work, there's such a range in the way he delivers it and in the way in what he's actually covering, aesthetically and plot wise. It's so versatile, and I think it's unlike most directors. I would say Christopher Nolan, obviously, like the one you've covered before, of course, is up there with him in that respect. But I think there's something that David Fincher does aesthetically which is just a bit different.
I think you're spot on. Also, but the thing is, coming back to Nolan as well, a lot of people have one criticism of Nolan, which is that he very rarely steps out of the Gotham world or the sci-fi world,
Yes.
and they're all kind of in that league, which is why Dunkirk was so high on the list, because it felt like a realist thing that he hadn't actually tried before. Whereas you're spot on with Fincher. I mean, the range is absolutely all over the place. I think, for me, the element of the meticulous is very much there.
Yes,
you do a million takes with Fincher until you
Yeah.
find the right one, or each element of the right bit is there.
No, exactly.
But it's better to have too much to choose from than too little. But it's just if you're
Exactly,
an actor,
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
feel like
Exhausted.
Yeah. So I have a feeling, despite, as we're saying, his versatility is very strong, sort of back catalogue.
Yeah.
I think we might actually only cover a maximum of 4 films.
I would agree.
Which is odd, but I think there's only really debate about which film you put third. I think if you think about it, most people have the same top 2. And if they don't, then that'll be great, and that'll be a great point of discussion. But I'd love to have a controversial opinion on this, but I feel like it just won't happen. But these films need to be talked about, and I'm very happy to do that. So I'm not cheating this time, Drew. All my films are directed by David Fincher, but I'm quite glad I'm not doing this with Drew, so that his end doesn't sound like a potato. Okay, Will, tell me what your number 3 favourite David Fincher film is.
Number 3, I'd say Fight Club.
Okay.
It's my number 3. I'm sensing from your expression that it's slightly higher on your list, or maybe not on it at all.
It's my number 3.
Is it?
Club,
Oh,
yeah.
well, there we go.
I've got a feeling it might end up being exactly the same order. But yeah, okay, tell me what you love about Fight Club.
The first thing that comes to mind when you think about Fight Club for me is it's just bizarre.
Yeah.
The film. It's just weird. I think the first time I started watching it, a few years back when I was a bit younger, I actually gave up on the film completely. Like, I'd say about after the first third, I was just like, no. It was when they were. It's a spoiler, but it was when they were dragging the fat out of the bins to make human soap. I was like, nah, this is just weird. So I gave up on it then. But then, upon revisiting it, I think I was older, gained a little bit more perspective, and you can see the artistry and how it's done, and how it's so different from everything else. Because before that, I'd seen Zodiac, Social Network, and those 2 films are phenomenal, but they're so different in a way to what he's done before.
Sure.
So that's the thing that sticks out for me: the bizarreness, the surrealness of it, but also there's something very real about the message behind it as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's sort of philosophical disguised in this sort of brutish masculine world.
Yes, yeah.
The fighting is, up to the nth degree a representation of ego and masculinity and sort of disorder. I like how the narrator is kind of the everyman. It feels like it's a coming of age film for people who are in their 30s, who've trodden the path that they've been told they have to try and fit in and be happy, but they aren't unhappy. And so, they've got to kill the idea of everything they've been taught by their parents, by their God, by their teacher. And as such, it's a film about intimacy and personality. And the ideas in the film aren't really revolutionary. They're just sort of stepped up a generation. Because this is the kind of film where this could very easily be about a club at school that was going on, and it's a teen coming of age, whereas absolutely. This takes on a different tone because of the aging it's setting in.
I would agree. I think it is a very real and it's intimate, but also an existential thing that we explore with Edward Norton's character.
Yeah.
It's very, very personal, but the way it's presented is so surreal. The plotline that it fits into is just bizarre, as I said. Yeah, I think it's just phenomenally illustrated, aesthetically, visually, and to do all that just with what is essentially just someone being so dull and frustrated with his own life, and to expand it to that, to the universe that he creates is just mental.
Yeah. The big question is, did you see the reveal coming first time you got to that point?
No.
No.
No, it's the moment when he sat down in the hotel room.
It is, yeah.
And then it's just him speaking to no one. It's hit me like a ton of bricks, I can't lie.
Yeah.
But.
Well, this is the thing, because I think at certain points in the film, it seems impossible, the world that's been made. Yeah. So, you sort of think, how can he be downstairs when Tyler and Marla are upstairs, doing whatever. But I think that is just I think that's kind of what makes the reveal so good, is because the more you think about it, the more you think that, what he's having is essentially an out-of-body experience, and that's the best way of presenting it, with someone literally out of body and having another version of you that you don't recognise in another part of your world. I think that's why Helena Bonham Carter's character is really important to the story and represents so much. And she's amazing at it, she always is. I chose this at 3. I don't know, I was very, very close to putting Zodiac here.
Right.
But the reason I didn't is Zodiac needs a lot of patience. Like, it's an incredible character study and study of process and resilience. I love it. Some say its conclusion isn't very satisfying. And it takes too long. I think that actually has its place, because it's representative of what that,
it's reality.
Exactly. Yeah. And there is that moment at the end where he walks into the shop and sees that, there's that going on. But I think that's the point of it, is the first time viewing, there's so much tension and desperation that you do basically reach a conclusion. It's just not a satisfying one.
Yeah.
People had the same problem with the last series of Line of Duty. I don't know if you saw that, but people hated the ending because it wasn't satisfying. But they were making the point that things aren't always wrapped up and satisfying as they are. But the reason I chose Fight Club in the end was because I felt Zodiac. I know it's the point of it, but parts of it, it just felt like it was hitting slightly too long. It felt like it was hitting the same notes a few too many times. Yeah. And whereas with this, it was taken, like we're saying, in so many weird directions that I thought the variety of it lended it a sort of a fresh viewing to each scene.
Yeah.
Whereas you felt sort of trapped with Zodiac in terms of the place they were in the adventure. I noticed actually, it's Jeff Cronenworth on cinematography, who did a lot of music videos before he did Fight Club. And then subsequently he's done work with, Fincher again and Catherine Bigelow and loads of really big directors. But he perfectly sort of encapsulated this kind of dark Fincher world that he's become kind of famous for. And I think it's shot in a really clever way. It looks confusing, as if to confuse us. Yes. But what makes it really clever is the shots with just the narrator are really bland, like you're saying in the hotel room. It is just him talking to himself. Yeah. And the ones with Tyler are much more hyper-real, sort of torn apart, and they look sort of more dark and dingy, as if that's what Norton's going to end up heading to if he carries on down that path.
I definitely agree with that. I also think you talked about the cinematography, and I think that's something very crucial aesthetically to the film, because they've become trademarks of Fincher's work that came from Pulp Fiction, these impossible shots that couldn't be filmed with the camera, and it's the combination of animation and real motion picture in literally within seconds of each other. And obviously we're used to seeing that now, but in 1999 when it was released, that would have just been
completely revolutionary.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to say trippy experience.
No, but I know what you mean.
A very strange.
It was a new take on what was mainstream cinema, definitely. Yeah. And I think that's kind of why people revere Fincher so much, because a lot of what he's done has become not cliched, but it's become sort of the immediate thought process for when you think of a crime film, or when you think of a murder, like a serial killer film, you think of Fincher's work.
No, absolutely.
And I like how this was also just funny. I like how there was just moments in it where you just laugh at things, because it's like, if this was just a completely dark, surreal and weird film, then I don't think it would have been as popular as it was.
Absolutely not. No, and I definitely think the performances contribute to that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Brad Pitt is phenomenal in that.
Brad Pitt is amazing. Edward Norton did this and then basically disappeared off the face of the planet. I mean, I can't.
Incredible Hulk.
I'm doing him a terrible disservice. Apart from the Incredible Hulk, but I think it's weird, because this one comes under, and I might do a podcast on this itself, but under rewatches, people might argue that this is the kind of film that doesn't lend itself to rewatches.
I haven't. I've only watched it fully one time.
But that's fine.
And obviously, I've I've done my researching around
Yeah,
it, so
yeah.
it's not something you can just leave.
Sure, but I think what is different is I don't think you'd be put off by the idea of watching it again.
Oh no,
Exactly.
it just doesn't-
Whereas people see this and films like Shutter Island
Yeah.
or The Prestige, where the build-up to the film is this big reveal right at the end, or this big moment of working out what's going on, that they think the rest of the film can't really be rewatched again, because if you already know what's coming, they think that you're not going to have as much fun with the ending. But actually, I think that isn't fair.
No, I don't.
Because you'll start to notice so many things on
you didn't see
rewatches.
before.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like, I think the idea of setting, instead of, having this as a teen coming to age film, but the idea of trying to find yourself in Alcoholic Anonymous meetings is so much cleverer than anything that would have been otherwise, because the reveal then has more weight, because you realise that's why he was in there in the first place. Like, it all links together, and it makes it feel like a much more possible and real experience that more people are going to relate to.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand that. Yeah, finding himself in other Alcoholic Anonymous meetings and all of that stuff is just, it's bizarre. You wouldn't think about it. You wouldn't think of it at all, and it's such a unique way of exploring what is probably such a widespread mindset in that one character. And yeah, that's what strikes me from Fight Club. It's just the uniqueness of it all.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm slightly glad that we've ended up with the same film at number 3, because I think it means that we'll have a lot to say about the top 2 as well.
Right.
Please tell me what your number 2 is, and if this isn't what I think it is, then I'm gonna flip the table.
My number 2 is Zodiac.
What?
That is what I've put.
Is it really?
I'm prepared to justify it.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Fire away.
Let me get ready. Right. Okay.
Oh my god. Right.
I just think it's a film where the director has made you feel so intensely exactly what they wanted you to feel. That's my feelings of it. I'm not gonna say it's a difficult film to watch.
Yeah.
It is. It can be exhausting.
Yeah.
It puts you through waves. But I think that's exactly what the characters have experienced. I wouldn't say it's an enjoyable film to watch. Like, I'm putting it here just because I think it's a film that needs to be acknowledged as one of his pieces.
Sure.
And yeah, it's a representation of him as a director creating something that really moves between character and audience. The death scenes, the murder scenes, are probably the best example of that. The way it's shot is so perfect. Those murder scenes, because sometimes they'll take a wider shot. And you see just enough to know what's happening, but you want to see more. You want the camera to move to see everything. It creates so much discomfort looking at it like that. The use of silence that before the murders, there's absolutely zero music. It's just dialogue, and it's just really uncomfortable dialogue. Breaks, pauses, very realistic. But I think it's a film that makes you feel how the characters feel, and I think that's something that it should be acknowledged. I wouldn't say it's an enjoyable film to watch, as I've said, but
no. But the thing is I'm completely in agreement with you. I think you're spot on. I love the murder scenes, and actually, one thing I noticed about the murder scenes is that in terms of the actual killing, it happens like that.
Oh yeah, no.
They're just as quick as you like, and then it's off onto the next one. There's no messing around here. Apart from the picnic where there's a bit of messing around. There's not actually much toying that happens with anyone, and I think that kind of plays back into the story again, because you feel like whenever they're pursuing this guy, the next victim, the next death could happen just quickly at any moment without any control. And I really do like the wild goose chase element of it, and it's a great depiction of how many people would give up. Because by the end of the film, they're however many years down the line since they started the investigation. It's over a decade. Yeah, I think Jake Gyllenhaal's amazing.
Oh yeah. Robert Downey Jr.
is great. It feels to me a little bit like Fincher got hold of the script of something like Spotlight. Because it's a very similar setup. In Spotlight, the idea is they're trying to expose this, horrible goings on involving the church, but it's a team of reporters that are doing it. Whereas here, it feels like this takes that and puts the cynical, dark Fincher spin on it.
Yeah.
and obviously deals with something not more harrowing, but something more kind of grimy and more gritty. I like Zodiac. I'm not mad at you.
No,
I'm not mad at
I understand why it's. I completely understand why it's not in the top 3. Completely, but I just think you can't. I don't think you can miss that out of his.
No, I don't think you can. I think that's true. And actually, I think it's a film that deserves your time because it is a great example of writing and cinematography and all that kind of stuff. Even if the ending isn't what people want, or even if the length of the film isn't what people want, the interrogation scene, the interview scenes in the prisons are amazing. I love Mark Ruffalo.
Oh yeah.
It is a great film. I just
You can't put it on.
I just think that it means you've missed a good one.
Yes,
that's all.
Yeah.
No, I'll let you have that because in the end it means we get to just not talk about 3 films, so it's not the end of the world. Yeah. Do you know what I've put at number 2?
I mean, The Social Network has to be one of them. That's what I'm going to stick with. Okay. One of them. Not a number. I wouldn't put it at number 2, but you might have.
Okay. Well, I haven't put it at number 2. Okay. I've put 7 at number 2.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I have seen this film about 6 or 7 times. I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's the definition of suspense to me.
Oh, yeah.
And it carries that element of frustration and concentration and resilience that we had from Zodiac. Except this gives it the conclusion, not that people wanted, but it was a conclusion which hit hard and felt like an endpoint to the rest of the story. Yeah. But I do understand with Zodiac. I keep going on about the ending of Zodiac, but the ending of Zodiac is truthful and real and correct. I would have been ashamed if it didn't end the way it did, because that would have been untrue. It would have felt Tarantino-esque. At the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and the end of Inglourious Bastards, history's changed. Yeah. And those moments feel slightly hollow to me because it feels like, anyone could have imagined this bit of the story. And I know you've given us 2.5 or 3 hours, it's too long, of character build-up in the beginning with, but this ending feels slightly end. But I like the ending of Zodiac, but I think this gives me a lot more in terms of what I'm looking to get out of a film.
There's that classic Fincher kind of revelation.
Absolutely.
I completely understand putting it there.
Yeah. I think the script is perfect. It's Andrew Kevin Walker who's written it. The 2 cop types are fantastic. It's become that's one of the things that's become a bit of a cliche, the hot head compared to the experienced one. It paved the way for this style of film. The title sequence in particular, it's very gritty, it's hard hitting. The dirty print style introduction and all the kind of black and white shots, which have become synonymous with so much. Like it's the same style as the anti-piracy adverts that are like you wouldn't download a handbag or whatever it is. And I love the chemistry of the cast. They do what's put in front of them justice. That scene where they're having dinner at Brad Pitt's house with Gwyneth Paltrow, and they have that little moment where they talk about the subway, and every 5 minutes, they're only allowed to view the plot for 5 minutes because the estate agent would take them out just when the train would go past. Like, I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's actually a really simple concept.
It is.
Just take the 7 deadly sins and do 7 murders on them. And yet you don't see the final reveal coming. No. It's a horrible moment, and it's the only bit of it that takes place in sunlight. The rest of the film is dark or raining, and that's part of its appeal to me, because it feels like the end game of this saga can hit you anywhere. It doesn't really matter where you are. Yeah. Which brings us on to the slightly controversial thing about 7, which is Mr. Spacey. Yeah. Because he's a very problematic man who
obviously
appears to have done some terrible, terrible things.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because he can act a bit.
And he's done alright.
Yeah, he's really, really good in this.
He is.
And it's a shame. It feels sad to talk about, because there is a big argument whether you can enjoy the films of these kind of people after can you enjoy the music of Michael Jackson knowing that there might have been something suspicious going on? Can you enjoy R. Kelly's music knowing that he was a horrible man? Yeah,
that's a bit different, because I feel R. Kelly does write about those things.
Yeah, he does, that's true.
Yeah, no, I think...
Sorry, your body's telling you what?
No, but with Kevin Spacey, it's a performance looking into the face of evil, right? So it's it's a representation of a perfectly evil character, I think, and he pulls that off very well, for better or worse, for himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. He pulls it off perfectly in the film, and I'm struggling to think of somebody else that would do it like that.
Yeah, I think it would have been really tricky to kind of replace him. But of course, this was 1995 when this came out.
Yeah.
So, a lot of accusations and stuff were not surfaced then.
No.
So, to most people, he was just this actor. I mean, it wasn't until relatively recently that they started surfacing anyway. Yeah. But it's a shame. But I guess, and this isn't a praise of the film or a praise of Spacey, but I guess it kind of adds a little bit more of a sense of genuine fear about that final scene where they have him in the car and then take him out, because the kind of man that Kevin Spacey is, as well as John Doe. It makes it feel a little bit more uncomfortable, which is it's not a victory, but it's a thing that's kind of ended up working in the film's favour. Not by anyone's...
I would agree with that. It's obviously a difficult thing to say that...
What do you like about the film? Well, I like the fact that the pedo...
it's obviously difficult, but his performance, I would say he is something that benefited.
Yeah.
His background, shall we say, is... I mean, it adds to discomfort.
Yeah,
certainly.
Sure.
Yeah, there's not much more...
No. Although, to be fair, I think when he arrives in the police station and the detectives screaming that scares the crap out of me. I think the structure of the film's perfect, because what you think is going to happen, part of the reason why the revelation is so great is because you get 5 of the murders. Gluttony, you get greed, you get lust, you get pride, and you get sloth.
Yes.
But you don't have wrath or envy. And so, after death number 5, you're thinking this is going to be 2 more and then we're going to find out something big. But it takes you really by surprise at 5 murders in that, he reveals himself, and that feels like it completely out of the blue. Yeah. And I think that means that the revelation then has a lot more sort of impact when you realise what the actual outcome is.
It is the epitome of creating tension in a film, I think. And it does. It's one of these films where tension is created and it climaxes so well as you would want it to, as you would expect it to. You don't leave that film disappointed.
No, sure, yeah.
It's brutal to watch. It's painful, but it's... satisfying is the wrong word. It completes.
Yes, it's conclusive, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
If we're going to talk about tension, that sloth scene is one of the best constructed things I've ever seen. Yeah. It's like the scare is really like bone chilling, because there's no way that man should be alive. No. And then when we find out in the hospital, when the doctor just says it matter of fact, like, oh yeah, he ate his own tongue just so he could live on. When you find out what happened to him, you're like, and actually, that wasn't the one that sort of hit me the most. The thing that scared me the most in it was the lust murder. Right. Walking into the brothel and hearing the guy screaming, "Get this thing off me!" That was absolutely petrifying. And then when you see a picture of it slammed down on the interrogation table, it's like, the whole film's like that. It's all itchy, it's all wriggly, it's all unnerving, but it's all...
It is violently uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it's all gripping and made perfectly for that story. And actually, there's a version of the ending scene where John Doe becomes Envy and Brad Pitt becomes Wrath, where you see what was in the box. You see a decapitated Gwyneth Paltrow. But I'm kind of glad that that was cut. Because not in the sense of like, oh, that would have been grim, but like... the line John Doe has the upper hand, and then you're like, oh god, what, and then you hear it explain as Morgan Freeman's running back trying to stop whatever's about to happen. It makes it even more kind of terrifying.
It's left to the imagination, and that tension's still there.
Definitely.
If it was just revealed, everything that's built up is just gone. Obviously, you're still shocked, but it's not. It doesn't have the same effect as you slowly realise.
I think also as well, it's shot mainly using shot reverse shot on close-ups, so it feels like there's a person, like it's a personally based story, which sort of feels wrong for the first 5, and then you get to the ending scene and realise just how appropriate it was because of John Doe's plan. I think it's so clever, and actually, despite its grim nature,
Yes.
I just could watch it again and again and again. It's so good.
It's gripping. You would want to look away from it,
Yeah.
but you can't. Yeah, I do actually. I agree with you on that. I think it should have been my number 2 as well, to be honest.
Well, the thing is,
I can back Zodiac, I would have to say.
No, but I also understand, because Zodiac is actually a different type of film in that sense, because it's kind of leading you in a very different place, I think, than Seven. But having said that, I think we're probably both in agreement on what our number 1 is.
I would say so, yes. Social Network.
It is The Social Network.
Yeah.
We've probably both got a lot to say on this, so start me off, fire away.
I mean, I could talk about the script for hours, but obviously there's no time for
Have you read the script?
The
actual screenplay?
No.
Because I did, and it's almost exactly the same as what is on screen. Right. And most people will be like, yeah, that's when it's a script. But that's not how it works.
No, it's not. That goes back to the meticulous thing.
Sure.
This is probably my favourite example of his meticulousness, is this film. Everything, it's the way all these tools that he has at his disposal. There's so much excellence for him to use this. The score from Trent Reznor and
Atticus Ross
is phenomenal. So he's got that. He's got this script from Aaron Sorkin, which is just incredible, and he's got the acting as well. The acting performances are amazing. So it's the way that it's all brought together so perfectly. The way it's shot complements the acting, complements the script, complements the score, and it's just the way it's all brought together so perfectly is phenomenal, I think. And that's where I'd start with it, to be honest.
It's a lot to say. I think you're right, but I think one of the genius bits of the film is the structure it's told in.
Yes.
So you know from very early on that the situation is going to take a bad turn between the characters because of the intersplicing from the court meeting room scenes mixed in with the actual events themselves, which means that each sort of scene is then played out with weight because of whoever's introducing it.
Yeah.
It feels like every scene is more charged because of that kind of ending that you know you're going to get to, and you get you get a twisting sense of everyone's end points and their character types, and I think it probably is a perfect script.
I would say I would agree.
I would agree.
I think it's every character is so perfectly revealed in their own way.
Yeah.
I think my favourite. I think there are so many scenes I could talk about realistically, but one of my favourites is when they first meet Sean Parker in person at the restaurant, and I think every single character in that scene is so perfectly represented within themselves. They all reveal who they properly are. Also, the way it's shot, the way we're on Sean Parker, the way it's angled. The way it's just basically we're audience to his performance essentially, and when we just pan back to these three almost like judges.
But then when we're panning back to the three, it's Mark, it's Eduardo and his girlfriend. Yes. We're on Eduardo's side. Yeah. We're sitting with him closest to us as if it's kind of his perspective scene, because we see most of his discomfort rather than the sort of pleasure of the other two.
Yeah. And then all that scene, it builds up so brilliantly to him just leaving, and then they're in the taxi, and they're just wallowing in all of this that he said. It's just, it's obviously we know because of the quote scenes and all of that, we know that this is going to end terribly for certain people, and again that just carries, as you're saying, it carries so much weight in that scene. What other scenes?
Well, for me, I think you get. Carrying that idea forward, you get the idea from scene 1 that Zuckerberg is obviously just a really unpleasant man.
Yes.
And that's very much carried through. And so the jealousy element becomes far more weight, has far more weight in terms of Eduardo getting into the Phoenix, and then Sean Parker and that exclusivity, they sort of shut him out because he's not around for the actual sort of upgrading of Facebook.
Yeah.
And I love the use of the boat race as an example of these people being usurped by, these sort of these perfect looking people being usurped by no one you'd expect.
Oh yeah.
But I think there's two scenes for me, and they're not quite scenes, they're just kind of moments which demonstrate the perfect way in which Fincher does show don't tell. I think these are some of the best examples of that I've ever seen. Number 1 is when Eduardo's doing his freak out in the headquarters, and he slams the computer on the desk. At the end of all of that, Sean Parker goes up to him and offers him the check, and he's like, "But don't draw it. I drew it on the account you froze." and then he shapes up to punch him, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he says that line, which is, "I like sitting next to you, Sean. Makes me feel so tough."
Yeah.
And then he walks away, and he's got the security behind him, and instead of it looking like he was being removed, it's like he's being escorted out, and it just gives him all the power in the scene. It's so perfectly done. And the other one is relatively early on in the film. Mark and Eduardo go back to their dorm room, and Mark's having a little bit of a meltdown about something, and goes to the fridge and takes out a beer and goes and sits on the bed. And Eduardo hasn't seen him do that, and he walks in and he takes out 2 beers, one for him, one for Mark, and then looks and sees that Mark's already got one and goes, "Oh, right," and just sort of puts it back in the bed. And it's not mentioned, it's not spoken about, but that's the perfect example of, Mark's very much looking out for number one, looking out for himself, and Eduardo's thinking about us as the pairing.
Yeah, it's the representation of character ideology just in tiny moments.
Yeah.
It's the meticulousness again. And you talked about the laptop slamming scene. Something like 60 laptops.
Yeah.
Sacrificed for that scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I love that. I could recite that scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
Realistically, it's so brilliantly delivered as well. Andrew Garfield, of all the performances, I'd say he's probably
he wins it for me. Yeah. But again, the whole film was snubbed by the Oscars because they're really good at getting it right.
Yeah.
There's 3 times now possibly where Andrew Garfield arguably should have won an Oscar. This, Tick Tick Boom, he definitely should have won. I saw Tick Tick Boom and I saw King Richard, and Will Smith was good, but Andrew Garfield was better.
Yeah.
And the debatable one's Hacksaw Ridge, because I think he was amazing in that. The only problem was he was up against Casey Affleck in Manchester by the Sea, who did win, which was amazing. Yeah. And there was Denzel Washington with Fences in the same year, and I think those two, kind of maybe compete for him. But I should have won at least one by now. I mean, he's been so good.
It's the thing with the Oscars, isn't it? It depends who you're up against.
Yeah.
What happens in your year? Basically.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah.
But that example of how many laptops was it?
60.
60 laptops. Right. Well, yeah. Think about that first scene with Mark and the girl. Apparently, they did 99 takes of that opening scene, and at the end of it, Fincher goes, "Okay, cool, we're done." And Eisenberg goes, "You don't want to do one more?" Because he was that set on thinking, well, I've done it the same time I've done it the same a million times. Is he sure he doesn't need me to do something different to get what he wants?
Yeah.
And Fincher was like, "No, I think we got it." Like, they just couldn't tell how perfect he wanted it to be. I love that kind of stuff. I think that's so... It's just to commit yourself to your craft to that extent is quite something. Because imagine, if this was a TV series, ideally you want to bash out an episode in tops maybe a month.
Yes.
Month and a half.
Yeah.
Like tops.
That would be good. One of the bigger shows.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas with this, clearly they've taken a lot of time to try and get everything just as they are. Something I did want to speak about, and it kind of shows you that Fincher also cares. So, Armie Hammer is both of the Winklevoss twins.
Yes.
But he wasn't going to be originally. It was originally going to be him playing one and an actor called Josh Pence playing the other.
I did know that. Yeah.
And then the story is that they get both of them get called into Fincher's office, and he was like, "We need these guys to be identical. Armie, you're going to play both of them. And Josh, we've got to put dots on your face and we'll CGI Armie's face over you." And Josh obviously was like, "Oh, what a shame," but it was just like, whatever we need to do to make the movie better, because he was already under the influence of Fincher then. But what's great is, and what I love, is in the opening credit sequence when Mark's running throughout the whole of campus, Josh Pence's name comes up, and it's like that that tells you everything you need to know.
I know, brilliant. I feel like even though it must be it's at times an exhausting director to work under.
Definitely,
but it's one that takes care and loves his craft, and it's something that you, as an actor and as someone working on a film, you just have to admire it and go along with it.
Definitely.
I think that's...
And at the end, they even somehow managed, I don't know how, but in the space of about, a 3-minute conversation at the end of one day of the trial, when Eduardo reveals how much their percentages were cut down by, they managed to turn Mark into a slightly sympathetic figure. Like, they make, when he goes, "I never meant to be a dick," or whatever he says, it's like, there's been no evidence of that at all, and yet I still kind of believe you.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a testament to the subtlety that was kind of brought to... But you think about the scene, the moments where Mark is doing essentially the hot or not for the girls around campus. You think, that's it. You think, this guy is just... this is the worst. Like, what are you doing? And then by the end of it, you, having witnessed how smart he can be and how impassioned he can be, and then what he's built, you start to wonder, if there is actually sympathy that you can have for him, which is tricky because he's been so horrible the whole time.
Yeah, I think it's an extremely complex character.
Yeah.
And when it's based on real people, I think a lot of them, often people can get restricted by that.
Definitely.
But obviously here, it's only like semi-biographical, and the character is still definitely got its fictional elements. But I think, Mark Zuckerberg in this is. I do sympathise with him a little bit. It's the very final moment is him requesting his ex-girlfriend on Facebook on the app he's created in these past few years, and it's just that full circle moment. It makes you realise that this guy that is a billionaire by the time it's been filmed. Still, there's a very much human element to this guy that made this to get his girlfriend back originally. Oh,
there's a great moment. Hang on, I'm going to have to find this right now, where Mark Zuckerberg is in an interview or something.
Is this the one where they ask him about the social network and he's like, well, none of that happened.
No.
I was with my girlfriend the whole time.
Yes, this is it. He was in an interview and he mentioned something and someone asked him a question and he says, just something like, despite all the things that I had to do to get Facebook running, to get it, all the commitment I made to get it off the ground, I was human.
Oh, wow.
And then he goes, well, no, sorry, not was, I am human. And it's like, are you kidding me? It's so good.
It is brilliant.
It's so funny. But people always ask, why does Mark wear the same clothes all the time? But he's like SpongeBob, and he's just got several of the same shirt over and over again.
He doesn't really need to. What's he got to prove by wearing clothes?
This is the thing. It's like, that's totally not what his, if there's a perfect representation of his character throughout the whole film, is that he is very much a believer that intelligence comes before everything else.
Oh, yeah.
And that shows by the fact that he knows that he can use his intelligence to pit these girls against each other on his website, but actually never takes a care of it himself. You never see him dressing smart. But like when Eduardo goes for that freakout scene, when he goes there, he's going there because he didn't know if it was a meeting or if he was going for the millionth member party.
Yeah.
And even when they do the millionth member party, even Sean Parker's wearing a blazer.
Yeah.
Mark is just sat there in his rubbish hoodie and some jeans or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how he is completely based in personality and reaching and where you can go rather than how you're perceived.
Definitely. But I still think perception to him is a big thing. The way his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend perceived him in the beginning was certainly a motivating factor.
Sure.
Even when they're with their groupies or whatever, he leaves the restaurant immediately as soon as his ex-girlfriend rebuffs him. I think it's definitely still a factor in what he does, but I fully agree with you that other people are near insignificant to him.
If we are going to talk about the script, one moment that stands out for me is when they're in the I keep wanting to say courtroom, but the thing is there's only like 4 of them in there. They're talking, it's quite subtle, but they're talking about how much everyone's shares has been diluted, and you say how much was his shares diluted, and Andrew Garfield says it wasn't, and then how much was Sean Parker's, it wasn't, Mr. Amalkovich, it wasn't, and then how much was yours, and he goes 0.03%. And that lays out everything that you need to get from that scene just in 10 seconds of words. It's like, what it does is combines the director who doesn't use words to tell people things with the guy who uses the best words to talk about things and mashes them together in a film that's never going to be repeated. That's like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's brilliant. All those courtroom scenes are brilliant. My personal favourite moment from the script is it's in the Winklevi courtroom.
The Winklevi.
And it's the one when he's
plural of Winklevi.
Yeah. When he's looking out the window at the rain, and it's like, do I have your full attention? And it's the rant that he goes on after that.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's just, there's so many things you could say brashly and carelessly in that moment, but the script is so, there's not a lazy moment in that speech. In the entire film, even. Everything is meticulously thought out, and it's just perfect for the character. It's so brilliantly done, quotable, but also you hate him for every word.
Absolutely. Coming off the back of Sorkin,
Yeah.
I think I remember you saying that you saw Trial of Chicago 7.
Yes.
And you liked it.
I did, yeah.
I want to know what you think of his directing as well as his writing, because obviously he's done both in that film.
Yeah.
And people had a go at his directing in it, and I'd love to know what you actually think about the Chicago 7.
The thing is that the script is something that stuck out for me in that.
Sure.
And I will definitely say I think he's better at writing
I think you're probably
than he is
right.
directing.
I think what people are getting at is that realistically in Chicago 7, apart from the actual convention demonstration scenes, a lot of it's quite simple in terms of that court space is where they are for most of the film.
Yeah.
And there's only a certain, they've got a shot of the jury, they've got a shot of the whole bench, they've got a shot of the defence, and they've got a shot of the judge.
Yeah.
And it's really only those kind of rotation. I mean, they're done in various different versions, but it's only those sort of rotations that they use.
He's working with a limited space there.
Yeah.
But I think the rest of the film, in the demonstrations, certainly what's the one where they're pushed through the glass in the bar?
Oh yeah, when
they come from the park all the way through, their blood flows through the city or whatever it is. Yeah, that is a good.
60s inside the diner, 50s outside the diner.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's I think that scene was very good directorially, but I still think the script shines through in that film.
I think you're probably right.
And in probably him as a filmmaker.
I think you're definitely right, and he's been called upon as well in terms of constructing loads of other films. They've just called it when we need some help. Shall we get Aaron talking? Before we bring this to a close, I want to know if you were debating with any films going in, if you've got sort of an honourable mention kind of thing.
7, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's the one I feel I missed out.
Yeah, I'm glad that you talked about something else. It's fine.
Yeah, fair enough. But I was debating putting Social Network number 1. I think it's his best film.
Yeah, that's definitely his best film.
But so obviously it would usually go number 1, but I think it's an amalgamation of so many elements.
Sure.
Done by
right.
So
okay.
many
So you think Fincher by himself, in terms of his standout, is maybe something else?
If it's Fincher alone, then possibly. But even to bring like I was saying, all those elements together, in such a way to perfectly complement each other, to perfectly illustrate it all. I think it's still credit has to go to him, and it still has to be his best film. Yeah. So that's the only debate I had really going into it.
My debate mainly was with Zodiac going in at number 3, but also I realised how much I like the girl with the dragon tattoo. I think it's
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not as familiar with that as my other ones, but
I just think it's a really good film. I think it's sort of, again, it's an example of versatility because it's again Fincher doing suspenseful, but it's in a completely different arena. This is sort of in terms of espionage and that kind of thing, which is why Daniel Craig works so well in it. But I think, to be honest, we've ended up covering the right films. If you'd mentioned Alien 3, I think we would have had some trouble.
Absolutely. World War Z 2 as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming along, Will. I appreciate this because I want to do this one for a while.
I appreciate it as well. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to have you back on at some point.
Absolutely.
Director discussions are some of my favourite because you get to cover a load of wide variety.
Genres, styles.
Definitely. I think I'm going to start doing a thing at the end of podcasts now. Week 1, Will. Welcome to week 1 of this thing.
Fantastic.
Where I'm just going to do like a recommendation at the end of each podcast. So this week, I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
I want, if you fancy it, to watch In the Heart of the Sea, which is the Ron Howard telling of the Moby Dick story.
Oh, wow.
Which had Chris Hemsworth, Cillian Murphy, Tom Holland, Brendan Gleeson, Ben Whishaw, Paul Anderson. They're all in there. It's a cast and a half. It's a very CG heavy film. Right. But the reason I'm suggesting it is because a lot was sort of sensationalized around the idea that they were at sea for so long. Yeah. In terms of their days they spent filming, they were sort of 12 hours at sea, and the actors all had to essentially on 500 calorie a day diets because there's a scene. I don't want to give too much away, but there's moments where they have to be very skinny and that kind of thing.
I see.
If you know the story of Moby Dick, you'll know where that's going.
Right.
But I actually want it to get a little bit more recognition for the actual acting and cinematography and the way it's put together, because I think some of the CGI is like slightly questionable, but actually in terms of the whole ensemble of the piece, I think it works really well. I watched it on the plane to my holiday, and then I was out kayaking in the sea, and I was like, I can see the shore over there, it's fine, and I'm not that deep, but my brain just kept going, hey Dom, Hey Dom. Massive whale. And I was like, oh, don't do that. So don't watch it, if you're going on a ferry or something.
Yeah.
I watched Captain Phillips before I went on a plane.
Captain, a great film.
Great film, but eyes on the cockpit for the rest of the journey. But yes, that's the recommendation for this week. Again, Will, thank you. If people want to get in touch with you, talk about films or whatever, where can they find you?
Instagram @WillGerrard1.
Perfect. Easy to remember. As usual with me, it's Majority Dom on Twitter because someone nicked my name. If you do have anything to say, if you disagree, if you do agree, if you want suggestions, whatever, please let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback, whatever. And I'm slightly a couple of days late with this, but things happen. I'll hopefully see you again next week at the normal time. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And
What?
You're supposed to say bye, Will.
Bye.
Bye.